multiplying complex numbers now. I rewrote the standard form, and just a note, when working on your homework on the Khan Academy practices, if you have to type in a complex number, make sure it's in this form. It may count it wrong if you put the I first and then the real number. So remember, it's real number, then the imaginary number. Okay, so let's first take a look at this one. This one, I have 2i times a binomial. So that means I have to distribute there. So 2i is going to be multiplied to the first term and the second term. If you take a look at this example, this is where we FOIL. Okay, that means I have two terms being multiplied to two terms. Here I have one term being multiplied to two terms. So that's distribution. And here, like someone said, everybody gets a hug. Okay, so 3 is going to be multiplied to both terms, and the second term on the first one will be multiplied to both terms. Okay. So starting with this one, 2i times 1 is 2i. 2i times a positive 3i would be a positive 6i squared. Okay, I have an I times another I. So that will be I squared. Okay, now if we remember, I equals the square root of -1, and I squared just gets rid of the square root. So I squared would be equal to -1. Now the 6 and the I squared, they're being multiplied. So once it turns into an I squared, I'll leave i's as is because I don't want to, that doesn't look correct. Although it is, but just mathematicians just don't like negatives underneath the square root. So instead of writing this, we write I. So I, we could leave. But I squared is a real number. Okay, so I'm going to replace I squared. Every time I see I squared, I'm going to replace it with a -1. But we have to remember that 6 or the number that's in front of the I squared, if there's a number, they're being multiplied. Kind of like 6x squared, being multiplied. So here I would have 6 times, well, I squared, like we've been saying, is -1. So I'm going to replace it with a -1 plus a 2i. 6 times a -1 would be a -6. And the 2i just stays there. Now, this is not in standard form. So I'm going to put the -6 first, and then the positive 2i. Now it is in standard form. For the next one, 3 times 4 is 12. 3 times I is a positive 3i. Negative I times 4 is a -4i. Negative I times a positive I will be a negative I squared. There we see that I squared again. So we're gonna replace it with a -1. Notice, just because this is a negative I squared doesn't mean, oh, well, it's already negative. No, the negative is still there. So I'll grab this piece and I say, okay, well, that's going to be -1. Okay. Now, 3i and -4i are like terms, so I can combine them. 3i minus 4i is a -1i. Then a 12 doesn't have a like term, so we just write 12. Now let's fix this up here. We have a negative times a negative. That will be a positive 1, we have a negative 1i and positive 12. The 12 and the 1 are like terms, so 12 plus 1 is 13 minus 1i, or you can erase the 1 and just say, well, it's just a negative I. So 13 minus I would be my final answer there, and it is in standard form.